Heavenly Father, in Thy holy presence, we feel Thy security and Thy love. Help us to take this realization with us in every action. And help us never to forget that if we have to leave other things, we have to leave them. But never to leave Thee. Never to leave Thy side. Om. Subject this morning, how to overcome restlessness and worry. That's a great subject. We often get up and say, why am I jittery today? What is the matter with me? Nothing's wrong with you, except the thought processes are not controlled. The mind has taken you over instead of you taking the mind over. So this subject, how to overcome restlessness and worry, I think is a universal subject. We all need help on it. And yet, the answer is very simple. If you stop breaking the law and then do those things which will alleviate the karma that you have laid up, which produces these things within you, if you'll do those two things and then finally, as we often say, unite yourself with God's presence. Commune with Him, be one with His Spirit. If you do that, you'll soon see that restlessness and worry are things of the past. One thing we should never forget is that as long as we are in the body, we have a little delusion. The Master said, no matter how great the saint, whenever he takes on the body, he takes on a little delusion. It's impossible not to. As Jesus said on the cross, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? He, with his realization, if it bothered him just a little, we shouldn't worry too much about it. But the thing to worry about is that you haven't that God contact. Worry over that. Be restless over that. Not worldly things. So first let us understand something about the causes of restlessness and worry, and then a little about the effects of restlessness and worry on our system, on our consciousness, on our being, and then perhaps we will understand the necessity of doing something real about it, that we may be rid of these undesirable things, restlessness and worry. Now the causes of restlessness and worry are divided into three causes: physical, mental, and spiritual. Don't think it's just your mind. No. Don't think it's your body. If you had a good, healthy body, you wouldn't be restless. You might be. And don't forget the spiritual side, which is the greatest thing, perhaps. And so the causes of restlessness are found in the three states of consciousness: physical, mental, and spiritual. Now let us take up first, that we may have some semblance of an order in our discussion, the physical causes of restlessness. Physical causes of restlessness. It is nervousness that causes restlessness. In other words, from the physical state of consciousness, we are not obeying health laws. We have broken health laws. We are not practicing cleanliness, proper exercise, and getting enough oxygen. These are the simple things we have to begin with. We are breaking the health laws. And then there is that case of food. Food. There is so much misunderstanding about food. I understand that you had a big lecture on food not long ago, so I will not burden you too much with that. But one or two things just to point out, because this has to do with the cause of restlessness and worry. The food, as the Master's Master said, must be natural food, natural vital food, and non-irritating to the system. That's one thing we forget. As he said, any food that is a natural, simple food containing the elements necessary and which your digestion or system can handle is the right food for you. Now, for instance, you might start on eating raw food. Some people cannot handle it. But it says in the book we must eat raw food, so down it goes, indigestion comes and restlessness comes in. You must have the food non-irritating. If you cannot eat the raw food, it distresses you, why do it? Cook it a little bit. Be reasonable. That's why I love the Master's so much. He was very wise. So remember this simple law, the food. To keep from breaking the health law of food, have the food natural. You know what natural food is. Have it vital, but have it conducive to assimilation in your system. That's very important. If you have tendencies toward an irritated stomach, don't put the fried food in there, because you'll only suffer. You'll be more restless than you are right now. And so, on food. Be natural, have natural food, and have it non-irritating. Now, there's one thing I want to point out, and I'll be through with this food question. It is this. You must get plenty of protein in your system. Vegetables are wonderful. They do not build up in the system. They're very healthy for you. But you must get protein. You must get protein. If you have to have protein, if you have to have animal protein, have it in the form of dairy products, not flesh foods. For this reason, I have said a few minutes ago that the food must be non-irritating. Now, flesh protein and dairy product protein have the same chemical composition. Yet, one is very irritating. Flesh foods are irritating. Why? Now, this is the point. Because only 70% of the flesh foods are usable by the body. What happens to the other 30%? It floats around in the bloodstream, undigested, as a toxin. That is very irritating to the system. But the dairy products, same protein, same chemical composition, but there's a difference there. There's an irritation there in the flesh foods. Now, in the dairy products, 90% and more usable by the body. So there's not that waste floating around. Remember that. These are facts. That's why Sri Yukteswarji said the food must be non-irritating. But the strange fact is the chemical composition is the same, but the end result is entirely different. I had that illustrated in the World War. We used camphor, gum camphor, which came from Java. The supply was cut off, and DuPont made camphor. Same chemical composition exactly, because my druggist wrote and asked them. But in the system, the physiological action was entirely different. It was a less sclerotic instead of being a soothing agent. Same chemical composition. So, with protein, the flesh protein, the rate of vibration is different, even though the chemical composition is the same. And the result is irritating. I will not go into the causes, except to say that the vibration is different due to the fact that the animal's nervous system is highly developed, and when it is killed, there is a vibration that enters into the flesh food. So much for that. The food must be non-irritating. Now, going on just a bit to the physical cause of nervousness and worry and so forth, overstimulation. This is the worst thing. Overstimulation in eating, overstimulation in everything you do, overwork, mental overstimulation, overstimulation in sex. What happens? The nerves become irritated, sometimes burned out, because the life force does not flow in a smooth, harmonious way, but in a jerky way, irritating the nerves. And sometimes it'll be a big surge, as in anger, of life force, which burns the nerves out, can even cause death. So remember, overstimulation is one of the physical causes of restlessness, overstimulation in any form, in food, in mental activity, or working, and watch the sex. Watch the sex. I will not go into that. It's a subject by itself. And so, the nerves become irritated, sometimes burned out. But never mind. Remember, it takes a long time to break the body resistance down. Nature is very good to us. We get away with it, so to speak, for quite a few years. Then suddenly we begin to get jittery. We can't seem to get over it. But be patient. Be patient. Remember, as it says in Daniel, this is a great thing to remember. In the 10th chapter, from the very moment you set your heart to stand and to chasten yourself before God, thy words were heard. So if you are restless, never mind. Start now to correct these things, the physical, the mental, and spiritual things. Do that, remembering that God knows what you're doing, and that with patience soon it will pass away. It will absolutely pass away when His great love comes into you. When you feel your oneness with God, restlessness and worry must leave. Now, the causes of restlessness and the mental side. That's an important thing. Why is it? I've said just a few words about the physical side. Now, how about the cause of restlessness on the mental side? What's it due to? What is the cause? The cause is simply this: uncontrolled thought processes. That's all. Uncontrolled thought processes. Instead of we running the mind runs us. That is not right. Instead of our thoughts being under the control of our will and our ego and the spiritual consciousness within us, those thoughts are running us. Uncontrolled thought processes. What happens? Nervousness. The mind is irritated. The nerves become irritated. And because of this irritation, they lay us open to the ingress of physical disease. Remember that. The amount of current flowing normally in your nervous system is the greatest antiseptic, the greatest power against disease that you have. That's an important thing. You remember that one thing, that unless the life force is flowing harmoniously in the nerves, the physical nerves, they become irritated. And likewise, in turn, they lay us open to physical disease and such things. So, in the same way, the mental activity of the thoughts running you, uncontrolled thought processes. You look and introspect within yourself and see, telling you what to do, or if you can in an instant say, that's enough. I've had enough restlessness. I've had enough worry. Stop. That's the end of it. Can you do that? If you cannot, then the thought processes are running you. That is the cause of, the mental cause of restlessness. But, going on a little bit further, these mental causes, undisturbed thought processes which are not controlled, lead to a nervous breakdown. Simply the fact that the mental system is not under our control. It has got out of bounds, so to speak, and that leads to phobias and such. You have heard, we all have heard, about phobias of people going up in tall buildings, how they feel something comes over them. Why? Because the thought processes are not controlled, that's all. Others can go up in the tall building, nothing happens to them. Why cannot that person who has the phobia? Simply because they have not control of the thought processes, the mental processes. Likewise, going within subways. There was a lady in Boston, I remember. It took Mrs. Lewis 20 years to get her to go on the subway. Why? I suppose there was that phobia that the thing would fall in on her. But there are millions of people go. Millions of people that use that subway and are not. So these phobias are simply uncontrolled mental processes. There's one little story comes to my mind at this time about uncontrolled mental processes as the cause of restlessness and worry. In college, we had a fraternity initiation. And you know the horseplay that goes on and so forth. And right behind me was a great big, he was 6 feet. So I went up and, well, I knew that the only thing they could do, the worst, was to kill me or something like that. So I went through and had a good time and enjoyed it. But this great big tall fellow came up and began to cry. Weep and cry. Well, they had to kind of on him a little bit. So they cut down the ritual and let him through. This is a fact, a great big 6-footer. But the irony of it is this. It wasn't more than 2 or 3 weeks after that I was over in Chelsea. They had a great Chelsea fire. Perhaps some of you heard of it. And there in the middle of the street, with the uniform of the militia and a big gun parading back and forth, was this fellow, this 6-foot boy. Nothing but a phobia. Uncontrolled mental processes that he couldn't make himself go through with that simple initiation. So, that is the cause, the mental cause of restlessness. Now, the spiritual cause is another thing. What is the spiritual cause of restlessness? It is this: we have broken the spiritual law, that's all. Instead of realizing that we are not only animals, with a body that the animal has, that demands certain nourishment and has to follow certain laws, we've forgotten the spiritual part of us. We have accepted the body as the reality. We have neglected to feed and nourish the spiritual side within us. And as the result, not knowing what we really are, that we are children of the Most High, made in the image of God, we've forgotten that. What's the result? Nervousness, restlessness, and worry. If you know you are God's child, really know it, is there any place for restlessness and worry? No. We've forgotten that. So we've broken the law. We have to rectify that we may know our birthright, oneness with God. And so, in the case of worry, similar to restlessness, what is the cause of worry? Why do we worry? Uncertainty, that's all. Why do you worry? Think it over. Introspect yourself. Because you're uncertain. You're not sure of certain things. And behind that is fear. Fear. Fear of this, that, and a million things. On the physical plane, we're afraid. We're afraid that we're going to have ill health. We're afraid the body will give us trouble. Perhaps we'll be unable to carry on our work, take care of our children. There are a million things. Why? Because of fear. On the mental side, we have fears that our desires will not be fulfilled. Our children will not come out as we want them to come out. On the spiritual side is the worst thing. We're afraid of what's coming after we're through here. We're afraid of death with its uncertainty. But behind the whole worry is fear. Fear of what? This is important. Fear that we will suffer pain. That's the whole thing behind everything. Fear that we will suffer pain in the various states of consciousness, physical, mental, and spiritual. That's the cause of worry. If you had no fear, if fear could not touch you, no one can touch you. Worry will be a thing of the past. Fear is the basic cause of worry. Now, as to the effects of restlessness. The effects of restlessness and worry are simply, as I have said, they prevent the harmonious flow of God's presence within us as the life force. On the physical side, they lay us open to disease. On the mental side, what happens? What does fear and restlessness do to us? Takes away our peace, doesn't it? You don't have any peace when you're restless and worried over this, that, and a million things. And on the spiritual side is the worst thing. It prevents us from knowing and realizing that we are children of God made in His image, and that it is He who is in us doing all things. That's the real effect of restlessness and worry. So, going on just a little bit for a few interesting things, remember that unless you know the bliss and security of God, you have nothing. Unless you know that, you cannot eradicate restlessness and fear and worry from your system. Having that, as the Master used to say most beautifully, when you bring in a light into a darkened room, darkness disappears, like a dark bird flies away. So bring in the light of God. Restlessness and worry will pass away. Now, one or two interesting physiological effects of restlessness and worry, behind which is the cause fear, are these. You know that restlessness and worry leads us to irritated nerves and nervous systems, with the result that we may fly into emotions, paroxysms of emotion, and these absolutely, without question of a doubt, pour into our bloodstream poisons and toxins which bring us ill health, even paralysis of function, and as I said in the beginning, even death can come from a paroxysm of uncontrolled mental processes leading to the putting into the bloodstream of toxins. So we cannot afford to be restless and to have worries. I have one or two illustrations here of unnecessary restlessness and worry, which I think would interest you. You know, most of our worries, 99% of them, never materialize, but while they're with us, they're very real. But you look it over. How many of your worries came true? Very few. I think one illustration of worry, unfounded worry, is this one which comes to my mind. There was a lady lived downstairs in a house back in Boston, and this fine morning I was out on the front stoop, and her little girl was there, just a little thing, 4 years old, or 5, I think. There was an airplane circling around. I was talking to the little girl, and pretty soon the lady came out, and she grabbed the girl by the hand. She says, "Ann, come in here," she says, "before that airplane falls on you." This is a fact. And the vision I had was the youngster going in the door, and the mother pulling, "Come in before the airplane falls on you." Well, it might have fallen on her, but it was a big chance, wasn't it? So that's a case of unfounded worry. But I'll never forget how the vision remains of the youngster going in the door, with the mother pulling her by one arm and the kid strung out, going in through the door. So let's put away those things anyway, by common sense. Another case that comes to my mind is a patient of mine who owned a taxi cab. This is much to the point because this is more sensible. He had this taxi cab business, and it was taking most of his time, 24 hours a day, and he was snatching sleep in between calls. He came to my office for treatment, and I remember I tried many things, but he wouldn't respond. He wouldn't respond. Tissue wouldn't respond at all. And it was simply because of his worry over that taxi cab business. So he understood it. I explained to him, and we worked along doing the best we could. One fine day he came in, and he was all smiles. He says, "I've sold the taxi cab business." And do you know, from then on, this is a fact, he responded beautifully, and his ailment left him. He was all right. Why? Because that worry had kept his nervous system in a state of confusion. The life force would not flow naturally through his nerves. And, of course, nature cannot heal when the life force is not flowing harmoniously. It is the life force which heals. And so with those two illustrations, let us go on to the final and the most important part of our discussion, is how to overcome restlessness and worry. You know, in treating all disease, there are two main things to do. It is this. First, what? Remove the cause. Isn't that so? Remove the cause. As Jesus said, if you have a thorn in the flesh, get it out. So first, in treating restlessness and worry, remove the cause. Secondly, aid in healing and repairing the tissue. Aid in healing and repairing those burned out nerves, irritated nerves. Remove the cause is the first thing. Now on the physical side, we have physical, mental, and spiritual causes to remove. Don't forget that. Now on the physical side, remove the cause. Follow, as I said in the beginning, follow health laws. Do not overstimulate the body, irritating the nerves. Remove the cause, first thing. Then aid in the healing of those irritated nerves, burned out nerves, and inflamed tissue. Now, how can we do that? On the physical plane, we must watch the diet. We must use nerve food. Remember, the basic cause of restlessness is irritated nerves, nervous tissue. So we must eat those things that will sustain them. Allow nature to repair the tissue. Eat what? Eat milk, drink milk. Goat's milk is one of the best things. Buttermilk is wonderful. Also, lettuce is wonderful for the nerves. Almonds, almond milk, cottage cheese, lime drinks is one of the greatest cooling things for the nervous system. The master, when he first came, he made a drink of lime and water and sugar. The proportion has to be just right. You'll know when it's right. It isn't too sour, it isn't too sweet, it's just right. That's one of the greatest things to heal, help the nerves heal themselves. So we must first remove the cause and then sustain by proper food the physical system, in this case, the nerves, by these proper foods. Now, on the mental side, before I take the mental side, let me say this one thing. How important proper food is. First, remove the cause on the physical side. Now, in the case of diseased kidneys, they have found that if they remove the irritating cause as the undigested protein floating in the bloodstream, remove that, and then feed the body so that the kidneys will receive it, proper food, the kidneys will heal. So they remove the cause first. Stop eating the proteins. 30% floats around in the bloodstream undigested. Stop that. And then, if you feed the proper protein to the kidney, it will heal up. Dr. Kempner at Duke University found that protein of rice is almost 100% usable by the body. There are no waste products left. So when he stopped the meat eating, when he stopped the flesh protein, then he fed the patients wholly for a while on rice. And that protein left no residue. And he found the kidneys healed. So remember that. Remove the cause first, then sustain the part. Remove those things which allow waste products to flow through your bloodstream, and then eat the proper thing. Nature will heal you. The life force will heal you and bring you back to health. So much for the physical remedies to overcome nervousness and worry. Now, how about the mental? What are you going to do to repair your mental tissue? First, as I have said, remove the cause. Do not practice overstimulation, but the remedy for mental restlessness and worry is calmness. Calmness which comes from what? Self-control. Calmness which comes from self-control is the remedy for your nervous troubles, your mental troubles. How to attain that self-control? By practicing. By practicing the methods of self-control or self-realization. You have there, in the recharging exercises, there you control the life force. There you control the life force so that there is harmony in the physical and likewise harmony in the mental side. Control the life force. And secondly, practice the Hong Sa technique. which is the greatest art of concentration. One pointing the mind. Remember I told you the cause of mental restlessness is what? Uncontrolled thought processes. The methods of self-realization will give you self-control, producing calmness, which is the medicine for mental restlessness. If you have control of the life force, even your thoughts cannot function. Do you realize that? That's why these methods are so wonderful. If you have control of the life force in the body, the thoughts will cease because the thoughts are life force in motion. And when you withdraw the life force from that restless mind, then calmness comes. Calmness how? By self-control. That's the important thing now. These are scientific methods. Will is not enough, but the scientific control of the life force, which operates the mind and the thoughts and all functions, withdraw that. Then calmness is yours. Calmness is the food, the remedy for mental restlessness and worry.